Wave the man who sank the unsinkable ship, the Titanic's forgotten mistake. It was April 10, 1912, a bright morning in Southampton, England. The docks were alive with music, laughter, and the sound of hope. People waved from the pier, children pointed in awe, and mothers wept quietly as they watched the most beautiful ship in the world prepare for its maiden voyage. The RMS Titanic, a name that promised power, luxury, and immortality. Built by the White Star Line, she was more than a ship, she was a statement to the world that mankind had conquered nature. Journalists called her unsinkable, engineers claimed she could withstand anything. No one could imagine that within a few days, this floating palace would rest at the bottom of the Atlantic, taking with her over 1,500 dreams that would never see the dawn again. Among the crew preparing for that voyage was a man named David Blair, a second officer with years of experience at sea. He was proud to be part of history. But fate, as it often does, changed its course at the last moment. Just days before the voyage, management decided to replace Blair with another officer, Henry Wilde, to balance ranks. Blair was heartbroken, but orders were orders. In the rush of his departure, he packed his belongings, and unknowingly took a small brass key in his pocket. That key belonged to a locker in the crow's nest, where the lookouts, binoculars were kept. No one realized they were missing, not even when Titanic began her voyage to New York. It was such a small thing, a key. But that small thing would later be blamed for one of the greatest tragedies in human history. Titanic's decks shone under the April sun as she set sail. On board were some of the richest people in the world: John Jacob Astor IV, Benjamin Guggenheim, Isidore and Ida Strauss, and hundreds of families from England, Ireland, and beyond. There were also dreamers, immigrants from Europe who had sold everything for a chance to start fresh in America. The ship was divided by class. The first class dined under chandeliers, the third class sang songs of hope in the lower decks. Yet, everyone believed they were part of something magical, a journey across the ocean aboard a ship that could never fail. Days passed smoothly, the sea was calm, and passengers began to relax. The Titanic glided like a floating city, a world of elegance and illusion. Captain Edward John Smith, one of the most respected men in the British Merchant Navy, stood proudly on the bridge. He was nearing retirement and wanted this voyage to be his crowning achievement. Every evening, he walked among his passengers, assuring them that they were aboard the safest ship ever built. But beneath the confidence lay a silent arrogance, the belief that nature itself could not touch human genius. On the night of April 14, 1912, the temperature dropped sharply. The sea turned black, still as glass, and the stars glowed with unusual clarity. Titanic was moving at nearly full speed, 22 knots. Warnings about icebergs had been sent all day from nearby ships, but they were ignored or delayed. The radio operators were busy transmitting personal messages for first-class passengers. Meanwhile, up in the crow's nest, two lookouts, Frederick Fleet and Reginald Lee, took their positions. They had no binoculars. The locker that held them was locked, and the key, Blair's key, was far away in his pocket on land. They scanned the vast darkness with their eyes, feeling the cold sting of the wind. The ocean was silent, too silent. At 11:40 p.m., Fleet suddenly saw something ahead, a dark shadow, faint against the starlit horizon. He squinted, leaned forward, and then his heart froze. "Iceberg, right ahead," he shouted, ringing the warning bell 3 times. The officers on the bridge reacted instantly. "Hard A starboard." The command came. The ship began to turn, slowly, painfully slowly. For a brief second, it looked like she might clear the iceberg. But the Titanic's size was her enemy. Her massive hull brushed against the ice, opening her steel plates like paper. The sound was not an explosion. It was a long, tearing whisper that echoed through the ship's bones. At first, no one understood what had happened. Passengers felt a faint vibration, as if the ship had glided over rough waves. In the first-class smoking room, men continued their card games. In the engine room, sailors rushed to assess the damage, and their faces went pale. The iceberg had sliced open 6 watertight compartments. Titanic was designed to stay afloat with 4 flooded, not 6. She was doomed from the moment of impact. Down below, the third-class cabins began to fill with icy water. Panic spread slowly, then suddenly. The rich and powerful in first class were calm at first. They couldn't imagine the ship could sink. But within minutes, the reality began to settle in. The ship was tilting. Crewmen shouted orders, lifeboats were uncovered, and confusion turned to terror. There were 20 lifeboats for over 2,200 people, barely enough for half. Captain Smith, realizing the scale of the disaster, gave his final command: women and children first. The band began to play softly to calm the passengers. As the freezing wind howled across the decks, the melody of "Nearer, My God, to Thee" floated through the air, haunting, beautiful, and tragic. Couples clung to each other, refusing to part. Mothers kissed their children goodbye. Some passengers jumped into the dark ocean, hoping against hope for survival. Others accepted their fate in silence. As the water rose, distress rockets were fired into the night sky. Far away, the Californian, a nearby ship, saw the lights but did not respond. Its radio operator had gone to sleep. The Carpathia, much farther away, finally caught the message, but it was hours before she could arrive. By 2:20 a.m., the Titanic's stern lifted high into the air. People screamed, prayed, and held on. Then, with a groan that seemed to come from the heart of the ocean itself, the great ship broke in two and disappeared beneath the waves. Over 1,500 lives were lost that night. The survivors floated in lifeboats, surrounded by silence and stars, watching the place where the ship had vanished. The Atlantic was calm again, as if nothing had happened. But the world would never be the same. When the investigations began, many theories emerged. Some blamed Captain Smith for ignoring warnings. Others blamed the speed, the rivets, the ship's design. But one small detail caught everyone's attention: the missing binoculars. If the lookouts had them, they might have spotted the iceberg a minute or two earlier. That minute could have changed everything. That minute could have saved the ship. Years later, the key was found among David Blair's belongings. It was auctioned, kept as a relic of fate, a reminder of how the smallest human error can change the course of history. The Titanic was not just a ship, it was a lesson carved in steel and sorrow. A reminder that human pride, when it forgets humility, invites tragedy. More than a century has passed since that cold night. The wreck of the Titanic lies deep beneath the ocean, silent, broken, yet immortal. Divers who visit it describe a strange feeling, as if time itself stands still down there. Plates still rest on tables, shoes lie side by side on the seabed, and chandeliers hang frozen in the dark. The ship that was once a symbol of human triumph now whispers of human fragility. And somewhere in that silence, perhaps, the ocean still remembers a small brass key. And the man who unknowingly carried the fate of 1,500 souls in his pocket.